Hi, everybody. This session is called OMG, They Don't Speak English. Okay, actually, it's not OMG, They Don't Speak English. It's OMG, They Don't Speak English. Because I'm thinking of the teacher often we get in school who suddenly has a single child who speaks no English and they've got no idea what to do. Or the new teacher who suddenly finds they've got five children who speak very little English and they're completely lost. And that's what that's the thing that I hope most that section that Racing to English is doing is giving teachers actual stuff they can use tomorrow and some understanding of why we're doing it. So that's what I want to look at. So there are two big questions. What am I supposed to do? And how on earth can I do it? Okay. So I've if you probably know the Racing to English website, and hopefully because there are about 30 videos for you to watch. And I want to show you now the very first one. There's a reason for that because oh no, let's watch it and you'll see the reason as we go through. Let's hope this works.
Hello language teachers, I want to tell you about my campaign. It's called OI, and OI stands for Organise Interaction. When we're thinking about teaching, we're constantly thinking about what we are going to teach the children. I'm suggesting that in fact the most important thing we should think about is how we organise the children to speak to each other. Because children learn so much quicker if they're speaking and if they're speaking to other children rather than to adults. So I've written Racing to English, which has over 350 language teaching activities on it, all of which focus on getting children to interact with each other and talk to each other. And I want to show you one of them now, which will not only illustrate the sort of work I do, it will also illustrate the key principles of all language teaching, I hope. The game is called the Shape Monsters game, and you can see my baseboard here with the shapes on it. Two teams, one or two people in each team. First team picks up a card, and there's their shape monster, and it's got a hexagonal body and a rectangular head, so it can go on a hexagon or a rectangle. Okay, you must say the sentence. My shape monster has got a hexagonal body, and then it's green's turn. My shape monster has got a semicircular head. Oh, wrong way. And so on. You take it in turns until one of you gets a line of four, horizontally, diagonally, or vertically. Sometimes the whole board gets full, but nobody's got four in a line. So that's no problem. Count up how many three in a lines you've got. Well, green's got one here, two here. Pink has got one, two, three. So pink is the winner. Well, of course, I wrote that activity, so I think it's just wonderful. But assuming you think it's at least reasonable, what's good about it? That's the question I'd like you to consider. What was good about that activity?
I've paused the video at that point, and if anybody be willing to, not too shy, to share what they thought might be reasonable or might even be excellent in that game, please could you share it now? Would anybody dare? No, nobody dares, I think.
It's quite a
Okay.
familiar concept, isn't it? The formats of the game is something that a lot of children will have come across, and the fact that it's visual and that there's no dependency on reading skills or writing or anything like that takes the pressure off.
Oh gosh, yes, there's such a lot in what you've just said. The one I want to pick up on is the visuals. Absolutely key to learning a language is understanding what the words mean, and we have to put the words into a context that makes it absolutely clear what the children are learning and understand what the language they're hearing. So visuals and the little pictures there are really, I mean, they're not brilliant pictures, but they absolutely are clear with those particular shapes. What was the other thing? And the other thing you said was familiarity. So we're using stuff that children are familiar with, which makes everything. There's one more thing, was that fun. Because it's a game, it begins to be fun and therefore not threatening. And children get involved with it much more easily. Has
Gordon,
anybody else
Fiona
got any?
also shared in the text box. She said that it's visual and also that there's limited language required. So once the vocabulary's been pre-taught, it's limited in what they're required to use.
Oh, I like the word limited. That's not one of mine. That's brilliant. Okay, yes, we've got a narrow amount of language for the children to be learning. In fact, my word is language aims. So I know clearly what language I want the children to be learning. And in particular, on this one, it's not circle or rectangle, it's circular and rectangular. So in other words, it's that one step up. But I know, and also the sentence. I know exactly the sentence I want them to use. You know, my shaped monster has got. Lovely. Thank you both very much. That's absolutely brilliant. So now let's see what the video says.
Well, I wonder what ideas you had saying why that was a good activity. The first one, of course, is interaction. Learners have to interact with each other in order to play the game, which is brilliant. And the other thing, the most wonderful thing for language learning is a huge amount of repetition. I remember when I was learning to be a language teacher, my lecturer said, learners have got to hear something 7 times before they remember it. Yes, right. I'd been teaching 4 years by then. Some of my children, 7 times? No. They needed 77 times, and 1 or 2 of them 777 times. So I think you need a huge amount of repetition. So we got that, and of course it wasn't boring because it was game-like. In fact, it was fun, and that's my third point. Learning a language can be not only difficult, but quite upsetting at times. And if you make it fun, then people are joining in and feel very confident and enjoy themselves. So fun is important. Those little pictures that we were using on the game are also great because they give visual support. Understanding is absolutely fundamental and crucial to all language learning. And even those little pictures gave a help to that understanding. So visual support is superb. And did you notice that I knew exactly the language I wanted the children to use, right down to the word itself, and certainly the sentence. The sentence was, my shaped monster has got a something shape. And it wasn't a circle. It wasn't a circle or a rectangle. It was circular, rectangular, a rectangular body, a hexagonal body. It was the adjective I needed. That one level up. So know exactly what you want the children to learn is very helpful. And finally, well, the 2 most important things, don't forget them: interaction and repetition. Well, that's all I want to say about the Shape Monsters game. There are lots of other Line of 4 games on Racing to English, and they're pretty easy to make yourself. So why don't you go and make some for your students and have some fun yourself?
Has anybody got any questions or comments or experiences when they're teaching that they'd like to share? Any good ideas that you've had? Are we saying no to that? Looks like it. Okay. I'd like now just to give you a quick overview of Racing to English. And stage 1 is for absolute zero beginners, for children who know nothing. And it's got 141 activities, but the central thing about it is, the key thing are these photo sets. And each photo set has got a picture dictionary like you can see. And it all has these cards for you to print out, and you can play all sorts of games with them. There are teacher's notes which give you all sorts of ideas, and another of my videos will actually tell you how to use these little cards. And goes with it some language, some worksheets. I'm not assuming that children can read and write in Roman script. So for those children who are total beginners or very young, then we've got some copying work. Then we've got some matching work where you're matching pictures to words and using their first language in the middle there. And I've had a change of heart about word searches. I used to see them as just time fillers. But actually now I think they really focus your eyes and your mind on spellings and making sure you know what it is. And this is a very simple substitution table. So I might ask, and also we've got worksheets which are actually getting children to talk to each other. So even though it's worksheets, we've got interaction. So I ask my friends some questions. I mean, how many knees have you got? And then they've got to answer, I've got 2 knees. But I want us to have a little talk about substitution tables, which are absolutely brilliant. Here's one, and you can see there are 6 animals and 6 parts of animals. So 6 sixes are 36. There are actually 36 questions here. So has a crocodile got a tail? Has a crocodile got a trunk? Has a crocodile got fins? Has a crocodile got wings? And so on and so on and so on. And then you put children into pairs or even threes to ask each other questions. So has a monkey got a trunk? Has a lion got a tail? And so on. So they take it in turns to ask each other questions. So even though it's written and reading and writing, you're still getting oral work there. And so I get them talking, and then they have to write a certain number of questions. I always say 10, but it could be anything, couldn't it? And just a quick look at the photo sets, because what I'm trying to introduce at stage 1 are basic language that are very common. So obviously classroom objects, and I've got a whole set of pictures, a dozen pictures of classroom objects. I wouldn't use that one unless it's for the reading and writing. I mean, real objects are actually better than photographs. But, you can use the photographs as a basis of reading and writing. Then I've got family, mother, father. I struggled to find a family photograph of mother, father, son, and daughter. Had to go back to that's my grandmother sitting there. And earlier than that, I've got people, so boy, girl, man, woman, baby, a dozen clothes, a dozen things from the dining room like knives and forks, and a dozen vegetables and a dozen animals. Just basic things that most children would know early on. And then the second half of stage 1, we're looking at actions. So we're going from the sentence, what's this? Is it a dog? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. To what are you doing? I am walking. I'm drinking a cup of tea. And I've got 4 sets, so there must be 48 pictures of people doing various actions. People and statues and what's the other thing? Cartoons doing actions. So there's lots to teach there. Okay, so I do like people joining in. So if you've got any comments, tell me how wonderful I am. That would be nice. Or serious. Yes, Helen, are you ready?
Hi. I've met you a couple of times in the past, Gordon. We
I recognise
purchased
your name.
yeah, we purchased the programme for all our schools in Gwynedd and Anglesey, North Wales. So we've been using your materials. Well, we use them every day, and we have done for many years. So yeah, it's nice to see you looking well. But yeah, I certainly recommend the programme. It's made a big difference for us and for our pupils for sure. And the ease of the fact that they are in Word formats means that we can advise our class teachers that they can put the Welsh language on there as well, and they do, so that makes a difference because, as you know, our schools are mainly Welsh language schools, so Welsh medium.
Oh, I'm sorry, you almost brought tears to my eyes. That was lovely of you. Thank you so much. Yes, well, I've given talks around Wales as well, which has been lovely. It's always a wonderful experience to go to Wales. Thank you. That's really nice. And you've brought up some important points as well. Okay, any other comments or things? No? Thanks, Helen. Okay, so looking at stage 2, this is all about stories, but we've still got lots of language games as well. 36 language games and 47 stories. Okay, and I just want to show you this particular game, which is Guess Which Person, because this is the ultimate language teaching game. So basically, I think of one person, and you've got to ask questions to find out which one I'm thinking about. So is it a man or a woman? Has he got glasses? Is she smiling or whatever? So you've got all sorts of language which comes out of that game. It's a Who's That game, isn't it? Is that what it's called? Guess Who? Is it called Guess Who?
Who? Yeah. Guess
Guess
who?
Who? It's Guess Who. That's right. Okay. And I've got lots of those games. There's one with butterflies and things on it, and football players, and various other ones. But at the heart of stage 2, there are stories. And I wrote some stories particularly to introduce the simple past tense. And this is the one I wrote for younger children. And this is all about poor Miss Keep, who was very busy at the zoo. And you can see just against Mog the monkey, she swept the animal cages, she bought the animals food, she cooked the animals food, she took the food, she collected, and so on. But of course, the line to make you smile is, "This is hard work," she says, "but it's easier than being a teacher," which I quite liked. So that's for younger children, focusing on the simple past tense. I do another one for older children about Billy, Millie, Maisie and Bob, who are living in a flat together and all sorts of things happen to them. And in this one, it's Maisie who asks people to do things and they refuse. In the end, she gets the pizza and they don't. So, but again, it's focusing on the simple past tense. I then go on to these stories, which I absolutely love. I collected these when I was teaching about 20 or 30 years ago. This is from my foster son, actually. He was 10 and he had access to a motor scooter of some sort, and his brother was sitting on the back and he couldn't stop the car. He couldn't stop the bike, and it went into the living room, crashed and broke his brother's leg, which may well have saved his life, because then he couldn't go into the army and fight in the Vietnamese War. So we've got a story and there's all sorts of things to do with it. This is the one I like best. It's you give this to the children, they cut it into strips and organize it into the story. Doing it in pairs is a good idea. Now, when I was doing it as a teacher, I used to read the story and talk about it and then give this to the children, and they did it very quickly. And I thought, oh, I worked hard to make that, and it was too quick. And I thought afterwards, if I had done it at the beginning, it would have been interesting. The first thing it would have done is allow me to assess where the children were. Was this story right for them or too difficult for them? But it would do something for them as well, because there would be bits of it that they couldn't understand. And so they're actually identifying their ignorance. And identifying ignorance is really important, because that's the learning point. That's what I want to learn. So if I've come across the word outside and I don't know it, then I'm going to be listening to what the teacher says about it. If I say, sorry, I don't know it, then I'm going to be listening for that in particular. And so that I know what I've got to learn as a child. Right, with each of these stories, there are worksheets. And again, I've tried to make them interactive, because the first rubric is ask your friends some questions. So I put them in pairs to ask each other questions before they write them. And the first 7, as you can see, are yes, no. So did Khalid watch a football match? Oh, I didn't really talk about this. Oh, that's another one. All right, yes, sorry, I'd forgotten this one. This is another story. And poor old Khalid went to watch a football match, and his grandfather said, look, your uncle's coming, put your arms out and stop him. And he put his arms out to stop his uncle on the motorbike. Oh, we're back to motorbikes again. But his uncle didn't stop and crashed into him. And he had to go to hospital for a few stitches or something. So the first 7 questions are yes and no. Then the next 5 are yes, I have, and no, I haven't, which I think is quite an advanced tense. But I use it here because from that will come other people's stories. So have you ever seen a football match? Have you ever said stop? Oh, and so the child says yes, and you said, well, when and what happened? And well, can you write the story about that? So that's why I have that particular thing in the middle. And then we've got WH questions at the bottom. On the right-hand side, I've got a hodgepodge of different activities. So you would probably choose, or the child would choose, which ones to do. So if you've got someone who's really struggling with reading and writing, we've got draw a picture of a motorbike. But the one I really want them to do is to write a story, either about a football game or a motorbike, or their own story, of course, and then make a word search. And in the middle, we've got more word searches. And at the bottom, I've got one I love, which is write 7 questions about the story. Write questions you do not know the answer to. So, where was the football match? Why didn't Khalid's uncle stop? So you've got 7 questions, and the answer is I don't know. And then you've got to rewrite the story, putting those answered in. So it's getting children to expand their writing. But you probably will be choosing different questions for different children, depending on their speed of learning for that page. Excuse me a minute. Thank you. So as well as the simple past tense, stage 2 introduces the simple present. And I've got a photo set here, as you can see, getting more complicated. A dentist checks your teeth and treats you if you have toothache. And you can play all sorts of games with them. So are there any questions or comments about using stories or anything exciting that you've done? We're thinking no. So I shall go on. And stage 3. And stage 3 is looking at more advanced tenses. I got here the have you ever track. And this is lovely. You throw the dice and say, you try 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, have you ever broken? So I've thrown a dice, I've landed on have you ever broken. I have to ask the person on my left, have you ever broken a bone? And they have to answer. Now, at the first time round, they'll be saying, yes, I have, or no, I haven't. But if, they're more advanced, then have you ever broken a bone? No, I haven't, but I have broken a cup or something. So they've got to extend it. So you've got practice here of have you ever. And there are 36 language games in the stage 3, all teaching things like that. And together with them at the heart of stage 3 are these true stories, each one a page long, much more difficult than the ones before. Some of them particularly focusing on particular tenses. I've tried to focus it on so it's multicultural, and of course we've got the story here of Rosa Parks, and that gives you an example of the sort of level. It's still very controlled. It's still very controlled language, but it's getting more difficult than before. And on this top one here about Tutankhamun, you can see I'm looking at I've emphasized the passive. He was buried, his tomb was hidden, it was covered, it was discovered, and so on. Oh, and I also give a little question at the bottom for discussion with your friends. So with Rosa Parks is, have you ever refused to do something? What was it? And get to write down what your friends have refused to do. And we read through them. There's a gap filling exercise. The answers are at the bottom. So depending on your students, you might want to cut the bottom off or not, so that they've got it. And then some definition work there. And just one more thing, we've got this 3-part photo set of a visit to London. So you match the picture, the words, and the description. And finally, I wonder if it is finally, these are my videos. You've looked at the shape monsters, but the other ones will give a good idea of what to expect if you buy Racing to English, and it will help you to do it and give you all sorts of ideas that you can make yourself. And I've also got this new website, which is racingtoenglish-updates.com. There are half a dozen stories on it, which are new and aren't included yet in the Racing to English buy. Okay, this is my final screen. Racing to English has got it's got 378 actually, fun and flexible language activities for you to print out. Yes, Helen was saying they're all A4 Word documents that you can fiddle around with. Oh yes, I think I've changed it now. In the bath photo set, I had wash basin. And my feedback from someone from Yorkshire was, we call it sinks in Yorkshire, so they've changed it. So you can change what you like, and that's what Helen was saying about you changing it and putting Welsh in. as in addition to English or as well as English or instead of English. Okay, and I think that's me done. Thank you very much.